saturation weekend. It's including us, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Nevada, Oregon, South Dakota, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. It'll be Friday, June 25th through June 27th. It's a saturation weekend. Well, we'll have the maximum amount of units we can out enforcing speed violations. So this year alone, we've already had over 28,000 speeding tickets issued for 100 plus miles an hour. So yeah, not going 75. We're talking 100 plus miles an hour. So 28,000. So that's statewide. That's not just Gold Run. That's statewide. So the idea is to try to lower the mileage death rate, keep folks safer, keep the highways safer, see if we can't decrease the amount of injury collisions that we get. So all you got to do is drive around and you can see it everywhere. I mean, the speeds are accelerating. They're getting just out of control. So we want to decrease that and bring that back down to much safer speeds. And then I just got off the phone with the commander just now, and we will have extra units available for the 3rd of July as well as the 4th of July to make sure that we keep the community as safe as we can. You guys got any questions for me about anything?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
The truck crash that went off on the eastbound lane down towards Applegate. It looked like there was a tractor trailer on
That was the one, Heather Glen,
Yep.
eastbound.
Yep.
What was I, 2 days ago?
about 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Do you know the status? Like,
I don't. It's actually handled by Auburn area,
Okay.
but I just know I got stuck behind it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know why it went off the road.
Yeah, we were there about a minute after it happened. We didn't see it, but we were.
Yeah, and it's so dry. They go off the road and started a fire. It could have
Yep.
been worse than it actually was. So I don't. I can check for you, but I don't have to.
I went down the freeway to Roseville, and I watched police officers chasing out a dark car, but their trucks were literally going 70 and 80.
Yeah,
Is that
it's very common.
normal?
It's very common now.
But are they pulled over for that?
As much as we can, we are extremely short-staffed.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah, I mean it's a statewide problem. We're short-staffed and guys are retiring at a rapid pace, and we don't have enough people to hire to fill attrition to meet up for. So, yeah, we're doing the best we can to stop them, but the speeds are increasing and the lack of experienced drivers is increasing. So that's nothing to be. I mean, it is a concern. Yeah. So.
The other thing I said, I go up 3 mile all the time.
Mm-hmm. 3 ride. I saw it today. But again, I'm talking about the experienced drivers. I pulled one of them over today. No clue that they couldn't, that it was not okay for them to be out there. At least that's what their excuse was, that they didn't realize that they couldn't be out there in the fast lane or left lane, whichever you prefer to. So, a lot of trailers. Yep. I saw one of those actually driving up the hill after that today. So, yeah, we're doing the best we can, but you got a lot of inexperience and you got a lot of people that there's not enough of us. So, any other questions? Thank you. I'm sorry, real quick. Tony passed away?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. We'll move on to item C3, Colfax City Volunteer Fire Department and Placer County Fire. Chief Egan, thank you.
Good evening, members of the council, members of the audience here, and members of the audience at home. I'm Brian Egan, Battalion Chief, Cal Fire, Placer County Fire Department, City of Colfax Fire Department. So I'm going to keep my my staff report relatively short because you're going to hear a lot about fire tonight. So I don't want to preempt anything, but to echo what both of our partners with CHP and Placer Sheriff talked about, we're well into our preparation for the July 3rd event in support of the city and the Green Machine, and I think we're going to have a great celebration. Our call volume over the last couple of weeks has been steady, highs and lows, even with the heat that we had over the weekend, and we remained locally relatively active. I'm excited partly to make this announcement, although it comes at the expense of someone was in a vehicle accident. But in December of 2020, in cooperation with Chief Estes, I was able to provide some pretty accurate data for the Battalion 13 corridors that related to the interstate and the number of vehicle accidents requiring extrication that happen on an annual basis. And within our battalion, we average a little over 30 extrications between the Colfax and Alta stations first dues. And that's higher than anywhere else in the county for an average year. Chief Estes, wanting to make sure that all of his stations and all of his personnel have the best equipment possible, met with the county and in March approved a purchase of 3 new sets of extrication tools for all 3 of our stations on the 80 corridor, Station 10, which is Auburn, Station 30 here in Colfax, Station 33 at Alta. Those tools are advanced, modern, battery-operated over hydraulic tools, a cutter, a spreader, and a ram. It eliminates the need of a power plant, gas-operated power plant. They're very fast, they're very maneuverable, very modern, very powerful. We received all the 3 sets of those tools a week ago. They were put on the engines last week. And today was the first opportunity. The engine at Station 30 and the engine at Station 33 had their first extrication this afternoon at Drum Forebay, where a major injury accident occurred where they used all sets of the tools to extricate the patient rapidly and get him in the ambulance and get him to the trauma center for definitive care. So real excited about that, those tools already are paying dividends in that. And then Councilman Fatula, to answer your question regarding the truck accident. So it was Sunday afternoon, mid-afternoon. It's actually in the Placer Hills Fire District, but due to our automatic aid and cooperative fire protection with our cooperators, the 2 engines at Station 30 were also dispatched. It was originally reported as a commercial big rig over the cliff with multiple passenger vehicles involved. As it turned out, the cause of the accident was a blown right front tire on the big rig that caused him to leave the highway. That driver was able to self-extricate with no injuries. The vehicles that were reported to be involved on the highway or that remained on the highway, several of them were hit with debris, no injuries in any of those vehicles. As it turned out, about 3 hours later, during the recovery process, the truck caught fire, which then became an immediate threat to the vegetation. The Placer Hills engine that remained at scene made a request of their dispatch to Grass Valley, and we started a full wildland response. And Captain Hale with his crew was actually the 2nd engine to arrive. A quick aggressive attack by both Placer Hills and our CAL FIRE engines at Colfax stopped it within the truck, confined it, never got into the vegetation. And then they remained there for the rest of the evening until the wreckers could remove it. And so anyway, that's that. We all agree with you 100%. You know, that's I watched it today when I was on the freeway, and I know Chris sees it all the time. You know, the law is move over or slow down for rescue workers, tow truck drivers, highway workers, and you routinely see people in that slow lane traveling highway speed past, whether it's a tow truck, whether it's a Caltrans vehicle, whether it's one of our personnel. And tragically, of the 100 or so firefighters that are killed annually in the United States, a good portion of them are killed by either being hit by vehicles or involved in vehicle accidents. So. All right. Yeah. Any questions for me? Yes,
for council, I just want to make sure I remind everyone to use your mics. We have people at home saying that they can't hear the council members. So let's just remember everyone at home is kind of dependent on it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Mayor Lemon, real quick, we have a public comment question for CHP.
Okay.
We have somebody asking how much accidents have gone up in the Gold Run area since last year.
I don't have stats on that handy. I can certainly find out for the next meeting, see what I can find out and see and bring back those numbers. But I don't have it handy at the current time, sorry.
All right, that concludes our presentations. So we'll move on to item 4. Presentations, PG&E, PSPS Wildfire Season Update. Brandon Sanders. Thank you for joining us tonight, Brandon.
Good evening, Mayor Loman, council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come back before you this evening, share an update on PG&E's efforts around wildfire mitigation. I intend to work through the slides in an abbreviated fashion. And if I can, I'll send my cards down the dais. I believe I had the honor of meeting all of you except Councilman Ackerman. Hello. Again, Brandon Sanders, Sierra Division Public Affairs, PG&E. If we could go ahead and move to slide 4, please. And again, if anyone in terms of constituents or members of council or those in the audience want to, deep dive into some of the other more kind of granular slides, we can do that. But if we can go and advance to slide 4, I'd like to focus on some of the high points. We just go one more, please. So as an update to our community wildfire safety program, between the catastrophic events of 2017 and now, we have greatly improved our operations in the interest of public safety. We have focused heavily on reducing the potential for wildfires stemming from our assets. A few examples of that are provided here. Our situational awareness has greatly improved due to the deployment of hundreds of new wildfire cameras and weather stations. We have worked in partnership with entities such as CAL FIRE and others to improve our situational awareness and visibility into field conditions. Members of the public, members of local government, our operational partners can access that information in a number of ways. The video cameras, many of which exist in Placer County, are available at alertwildfire.org. And the meteorology data is public.
This once more.
Yes, of course. It's alertwildfire.org. Maybe I do that. I won't have to crouch down as hard. I'm still learning after 6 years. The meteorology data is readily available at the website MESO West. That's MESO, the word west.utah.edu. And that gives you access to real-time weather data provided not only by PG&E's weather monitoring equipment, but that of our operational partners. And ultimately, the goal is to reduce the impacts of PSPS events, public safety power shutoffs, over time. I know we've had multiple conversations about what causes a PSPS, what leads us to make those decisions. And if the council would like, I can go into greater detail, but I think, given our present company, folks are generally aware of what drives those decisions. So if we can go ahead and move from here to slide 9 in the interest of time. This is an illustration of the cameras and weather stations that have been deployed across the county, many of those which are in close proximity to Colfax. This also just gives an illustration of where PG&E cameras exist versus non-PG&E cameras. So you can see up sort of in the Hell French Meadows, Soda Springs area, there are non-PG&E cameras, but in sort of the mid to lower elevations, we've deployed those resources to kind of fill in the gaps. And those cameras are really neat because they can view wide swaths of the landscape and help with fire detection and faster action on mitigation. Now, if we could go from here to slide 12, please. So just as a refresher, public safety power shutoff is driven by a confluence of factors. Most of those very familiar to our folks in the fire community, but really it involves low humidity levels, forecasted high winds. A red flag warning is generally the kind of the baseline condition, but really things like fuel moisture, on the ground conditions, the observations from our folks in the field drive that decision-making process. And we do this in consultation with the California Office of Emergency Services in addition to local partners. And it's really it's a key tool considering what's occurred in recent years, and we have deployed it with great success and have documented success in avoiding catastrophic circumstances as a result of our deploying PSPS. And so while it is generally inconvenient, we acknowledge that, and we're doing our best to provide customer resources in light of those impacts. It definitely works, and you can find information on the CPUC website We file after action reports for every event, and there is documented instances where damage occurred, which could have potentially started a wildfire. In addition to that, I would just like to touch on a couple of things. We will continue to operate our community resource center at the railroad station here. In addition, I've been working closely with Mr. Wes Heathcock. He's been a great partner operationally in deploying a microgrid for the city of Colfax. We are on track to get that deployed and operational by this fall. It involves the update as I have it today from the program manager is that civil construction, which is sort of the earthwork and paving and concrete work and those types of things, is going to begin on July 12th. Last about 25 days. The electrical contract is in play and will be awarded next week. And we anticipate the electrical work to proceed in alignment with the civil work, and that will result in the microgrid for the underground circuits in the downtown core of Colfax to be operational for a microgrid service during this PSPS season. And so I stand by that. That's the update I got from the team as of this morning. So if we could please go to slide 13, please, the next one. So just quickly to review, we are doing everything we can to give our customers as much advance notice as possible. This sort of lays out our process. We're working closely with a number of partners at varying levels in government to be sure that we achieve these goals. The one, I guess, message I can share for those listening on the webcast is that it's important that we have a way to contact you. If you've not recently updated your contact information on your PG&E account, please do so. You can receive updates via text message, phone call. There's even accessibility options for those with access and functional needs where you can get those alerts in real time to have a real-time understanding of the situation you're facing. If we can go to the next slide, please. This is really important to us. We want to make sure that our customers are prepared, but we're also doing a lot to support their preparedness. We're sponsoring organizations like the Placer Food Bank. We have a really strong partnership with the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, where we're providing things such as backup batteries, hotel vouchers, transportation assistance, and the like for those customers with access and functional needs that are affected by public safety power shutoff. In addition, we have a generator rebate program. So for those individuals who are served by well water and have experienced one or more public safety power shutoff events, there is a rebate program now available to provide for generation to support your water service that you operate privately on your property. There's a number of other supports here. We have several in-language media partnerships, and we're just really trying to be real aggressive on supporting the customers with the greatest need in our communities. And if we could just go to the next slide, and this will conclude the slide portion of this conversation, and I'm happy to take Q&A. So here you can see the best place to go for further information is pge.com/wildfire safety. There is more information than anyone can digest in a single sitting. Also, one thing I really want to call out is very important for our partners in the fire service, pge.com/backup power. It's critically important that if you're operating a generator at your home or residence or place of business, that it's installed properly in order to ensure not only the safety of our line operators and line workers, but the firefighters out there in the field. If a generator is installed incorrectly, it could backfeed the circuit and critically injure or even kill someone working that line out in the field. So please, by all means, take the proper steps with a qualified electrical worker to install your backup generation at your home or business. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from council?
Yeah, so I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Are we ready if there's a PSPS outage now to be able to directly connect to the grid and power it up?
My understanding is there is a temporary solution in place, a mid-feeder solution, but I don't anticipate needing to use that just based on our current
That's right, but
projections.
that's a good step forward in this direction.
Yeah, that's what we had in place last year.
Yeah.
Essentially, the same arrangement is functionally in place, but
Yeah.
it's not as ideal as the pre-installed interconnection hub that we've been working with Wes to have installed.
Right. So right now, between now and September, when you have the rest of the installation in place, we're protected for the area that was outlined on the map.
I believe that is the case, yes, but I'd be happy to validate that and come back to you, sir, with a certain concrete answer, because I'm not the operational person. So I just take what I get from those that are building these things and communicate it to you. So I would probably need to validate that, but that is my understanding. Is that because there's the mid-feeder solution, maybe Wes has further insight. He's been dealing with our.
It is. I've dealt with the operators and stuff, and they assure me that they can do an interconnection to the line. They'd tap up on the pole if we did have a PSPS event.
Yep.
interim when the PIH equipment's being.
Yeah, and the reason that's so important is because in the events we had from the year before last, all of the cell towers were out because their batteries died. And their generators were not on.
Right.
And then we had all of the normal network providers. It turns out they have a battery powered switch somewhere in their network. So Colfax had no coverage from cell phones and no coverage from the internet. So when PG&E says it was communicating messages out, nobody was getting anything. So I just want to make sure that this time around, if we go through another PSPS outage, that we don't have those same types of problems. So my question that I'd like to follow up with is what's happened with the cell towers so that we're sure that those providers that are connected to your grid are covered because they're outside the map. They're up on the hills around here, right? And just so we understand where we're at with that as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to arrange a conversation with perhaps you and Wes and one of your colleagues on the council to further explore that. I'm not an expert on the telecom piece. I do know there is action at the state level to, move on mitigation efforts.
Yeah, I'm not interested so much in the action at the state level. I'm interested in the action that affects.
Of course, I fully respect
So
that.
if for our next meeting, we could get him back on the agenda just to give us the update on what's going on with the providers in the area.
I'd be happy to work with Wes, and I have contacts with some of the telecom providers that sort of work in the same space as myself. It wouldn't be an update coming from me. I can't speak for those companies, but I'd be happy to arrange a further dialogue on that, perhaps maybe at a meeting level, and then if it escalated to or elevated to a council.
But I'd like to get a report out for the public so the public knows.
I'd be happy to work with Wes on that, Councilman Tula.
Right?
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Do we have any public comments? Questions from the public? No? All right.
Of course, thank you. And I know I say this, I probably come here once a year, but I want you to know that Wes and I speak often, and just please know that if you have any constituent concerns, if someone's concerned about a tree that's being worked or, damage to their driveway because of our operators, just let me know, and I'm an advocate for the city, and I'll be there to support and assist. So thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Brandon. All right. All right, we'll move on to item 4B, Placer County Fire and Emergency Preparedness Update. Chief Estes, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lone and members of the City Council. Appreciate you having me here tonight to speak a little bit about updates at a regional and statewide level and how they're affecting our county here in the city of Colfax. So again, my name is Brian Estes. I'm the State Unit Chief for the Cal Fire Nevada Yuba Placer Unit and proudly serve as the Placer County Fire Department Chief. Chief Egan speaks to you at each of your council meetings and gives department updates about the events that have gone on here locally. And I wanted to take tonight and just provide a little bit of some oversight on our preparedness levels as we come into 2021 and regionally what the impacts I think we're going to see are. So if we could progress to the next slide, please. So reflecting on 2020, I think everyone knows that it was a historic fire season. And in fact, it was the worst recorded fire season in California's history. In the SRA, which, as you know, is the state responsibility area, which constitutes about 33 million acres of private tax-paying land in California, we had 9,917 wildland fires in 2020. Of those fires, including the ones on federal jurisdiction, the FRA, over 4 million acres were burned. And as a result, over 10,000 structures were damaged or destroyed. 33 fatalities, unfortunately, were directly related to those wildland fires. And as I said, it was the worst recorded fire season in California history. Next slide. So bringing it locally here to Placer County, we had 990 wildland fires within the Nevada Yuba Placer unit in 2020. That's in those three counties on SRA. Placer County specifically has 367,000 acres of SRA wildland. And as you've heard me speak before, we have more habitable structures in the SRA in Placer County than any county in the state of California. That's significant. And frankly, it's one of the reasons that we were granted the 2 priority fuel reduction projects in 2019. As you also know, the city of Colfax in its entirety sits within either a moderate, and most of it sits frankly in a high fire severity zone. So even in the municipality of Colfax, we're not remiss or not absent from that really high fire danger area in Placer County. We had 341 of the 990 wildland fires were here in Placer County, and 47 of those fires were specifically here in Battalion 13 in the greater Colfax Alta area. CAL FIRE as a state agency has a part of our mission statement is to contain 95% of our fires at 10 acres or less. We are not a land management agency. We are a fire suppression fire department agency. And the main reason for that is because we protect private tax-paying lands. So initial attack fire suppression is our number one goal. And I feel that in Placer County and in our unit, we've done a pretty darn good job considering our resource drawdown and the demands on our people. We maintained a 95.8% initial attack success last year, with 14 of the fires in Placer County growing greater than 10 acres. And frankly, most of those were down in the front country, in the Lincoln area where there's still an expansive amount of grassland. So fortunately up here, we didn't see any large fire growth. Next slide, please. So what do our fire season and weather and fuel conditions look like for 2021? As of May 1st, which is kind of the big DWR snowpack survey they always do on May 1st, the snowpack in the Sierra was at 59%. Now that made a lot of people nervous, but it wasn't as drastic maybe as people thought. The snowpack level as of a week ago in the greater northern region was in single digits, ranging from 2% to 7%, and that's from basically Lake Tahoe, taking the Sierras all the way up to the Warner Mountains. So there are areas where it's at zero right now, and most of the central Sierra from Yosemite down is at zero. That's extremely concerning to us because it affects a number of things: runoff into the reservoirs, soil moisture, and what we may have into the later, drier months of the summer. We receive really no measurable spring rains. Our grass loading is above average. It's not quite as critical as those years where we had the really, really heavy winters, but it is considerable. And one of the things that we are predicting for this year that's a little bit of an unknown is the potential for another year of monsoonal flow or lightning. And really at Colfax and east up to the crest of the Sierra and on the east side is where we see most of our lightning activity in Placer County. The unknown for us here is whether that comes with any amount of precipitation or whether it's dry. Last year it was extremely dry. The storms that came through were extremely dry, and they accounted for a lot of our ignition sources with those large damaging fires. So overall, we're looking at our fuel and weather conditions being right about 3 months ahead of where we should be right now. So we're seeing burning conditions reflective of August right now and even early parts of September. Next slide, please.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yes, sir.
Is this year worse than last year or better than last year?
As far as conditions go, worse. Yep. Yeah, mostly the snowpack. I mean, we had a really decent snowpack last year. We had a heavy fuel condition. The thing that got us last year was the monsoonal flow, the lightning, and lightning of that magnitude in California on the west slope of the Sierra is about a 20-year phenomenon. It's not something we get very common in California in the foothills. It's very common on the east side of the Sierras, but usually comes with some level of precipitation. But about every 20 years, and if you look at the dates, we had 2020, and you go back about every 20 years before that, 88, 77, 2009, I believe, were some very significant years. So that's kind of our marked years in California. So our update and preparedness levels in the Nevada Yuba Placer here, we went into declared fire season on May 17th, which was about 2 weeks earlier than we normally would. We suspended all burning on May 24th. That was about 2 weeks earlier than we normally would. And we went to peak staffing on June 1st, which was about a month earlier than what we're funded for by the state of California. What that gives us on the state level when we're at peak staffing is 411 funded personnel, 27 state staffed engines, that's 22 frontline and 5 reserves, 5 type 1 hand crews, 4 dozer units, We have added a fourth dozer unit this year in the Nevada Yuba Placer unit. 2 air tankers and 1 air attack out of the Grass Valley air attack base. And I've been successful in acquiring, starting July 1st, a Type 2 helicopter, fire suppression helicopter that'll be based out of our headquarters at Auburn. So just a hop, skip, and a jump down the hill. And then, of course, that doesn't include our county fire operations, which maintain our 5 county stations, our 3 Amador stations, including Station 30 here at Colfax, our 5 volunteer stations, and obviously here, the city of Colfax. So that's an integrated and very, very important part of the state and local mission working together in mitigation of wildland fires. The one thing that I've been trying to be real honest with people about is that we are seeing a very significant decrease in our ability to provide hand crews across the Cal Fire. And that is largely due to the fact that the inmate population has been decreased so much in the ability for us to get them into our conservation camps. Our full strength for inmate crew camps is 196 crews. Right now, we're at about 80. And those crews should be sitting at 17 men per crew. And right now we're sitting at 12 to 13 men per crew. And it simply is just the Department of Corrections' inability to provide low-level offending inmates to our agency. So what are our mitigations for that? We've added dozers. We've got some other crew models that we're trying to explore. We've bolstered our aviation fleet with 8 of the S-70I Blackhawks being in line this year. And we're on track for 2022 to have 7 of our C-130 heavy air tankers online in addition to our initial attack air tanker fleet. Next slide, please. So I talked a lot about suppression, but frankly, and as all of you stood with me in 2019 over across the freeway and introduced one of our priority projects for California right here in the city of Colfax. Prevention and pre-fire has become a very, very important part of our department's mission, much more than I've ever seen through my 31-year career. And a lot of it's right here on the back door of Colfax. The North Fork of the American Shaded Fuel Break was one of the 30 funded projects, still remains one of the most important projects. Placer County RCD submitted an $11 million grant this year. That's going through the approval process right now, and that'll take care of that phase 2 and phase 3 end of that project. But we started it at Colfax for a reason, and that was that whole fuel break was designed around the protection of the communities of Colfax, Weimar, Applegate, et cetera, all the way down, tying in with the shaded fuel break in Auburn. We did complete 96% of phase 1. There's just a couple of little blocks in there that we have to get done that frankly, this winter was so dry, we ran out of windows to be able to do the fuels work. And it was just out of our control. Phase 2 is in active development right now. It's about 1,000 acres. That'll proceed down and tie in with the city of Auburn shaded fuel break. We treated over 800 acres of private land through land usage agreements with those landowners in 2020. And as you all know, the direct objective of that, starting in Colfax, was the protection of our communities here and the infrastructure along Interstate 80. Next slide. Part of the very first completion of that project was 90 acres here in the city of Colfax. And the fact that it was local responsibility area, we blended that through our relationship with the city of Colfax and through both the landfill and the water treatment plant. That was one of the first kind of anchor points of good fuel reduction treatment before we started to move down to the south and southeast. So, next slide, please. We're going to continue pile burning. Like I said, we've made great progress, but unfortunately, when you look at something like this at the wastewater treatment plant, some of those fuels are really light, and frankly, they've already started to grow back. And one of the things about fuel reduction is the maintenance on it starts as soon as you do that first amount of work. And by the time we get down to the city of Auburn, I'm pretty comfortable in saying that we're going to be right back in the city of Colfax, starting again where we were in a couple years. There are some treatments we're looking at with herbicides and different things like that, but there's nothing that beats going in there and treating it by hand with our hand crews and mechanized equipment. And our windows for doing this kind of treatment, especially prescribed fire, is getting really, really narrow. Those winter months where we can burn and get some production done and do it safely and effectively and manage the smoke, sometimes that's down to 1 month out of a 12-month year. So it's really challenging. Next slide. So last year, specific to the Placer County Fire Department and our relationship with CAL FIRE, I spoke with the board the other day, and I'm very proud to say we signed a 3-year contract with the county. We've been in a relationship with Placer County since 1952. And this was ironically the first year that we've signed a multi-year contract. And I think it was really a great measure of success in our relationship with the county and the state and their show of faith in us in providing their fire protection for them. Last year in Placer County Fire Department ran over 11,000 calls for service. That was, basically about 31 calls per day across our jurisdiction. About 1,600, almost 1,700 of those were within the Colfax Alta area. 274 technical rescues, primarily in the North Fork, the Middle Fork, and a little bit in Hidden Falls Regional Park. And like I said, the number of wildland fires responded to by county fire resources. We actively engaged in a countywide red flag warning program and generated about $860,000 back to the county in assistance by hire by using county equipment for the state mission. With that, we've been able to enter into a lease to own agreement for 5 brand new engines that are currently in build. And as Chief Egan said, we were able to maximize our use of the contract in the Amador stations and purchase the 3 new sets of extrication tools. If things go like I hope they're going to go into the next year billing wise, we'll look at purchasing 3 more full sets for those secondary engines at 10, 30, and 33. I can't speak enough about, Kevin and Chris and all our cooperators with law enforcement. There's a reason that there's a couple of logos on this slide presentation. We don't do anything without our partners in PCSO. Their jurisdictional authority for evacuation, planning, repopulation, the care and health of people when they're evacuated is under their jurisdiction. And working together in unified command with unified decision-making is really one of the things that I think we enjoy in this county day in and day out. So next slide, please. And that's the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you very much, Council, for your time.
Thank you, Festus. Yeah. Do we have any questions from the council? Did we receive any public comment on this item? Okay.
Sorry about that. Facebook, Dave asked if anybody's discussed the beetle dead pines along 80 that are blowtorches waiting for a spark.
It's a great question. I was just looking at those tonight. I'm sure there's multiple patches, but I'm thinking about the ones that are on the westbound lane, just about Weimar area. Yeah, we have a very active resource management bureau in our unit, and they are analyzing all those pockets of beetle kill as we speak, and we're prioritizing those. When we can go out and access that area and do hazard tree removal, we do it right off the bat. One of the problems we run into, frankly, is that sometimes those trees are on private land, and we just can't go onto private land without a land use agreement and remove those trees. But we still operate under the Tree Mortality Task Force funding to remove hazard trees, especially along access and egress ways for evacuation and emergency access.
Public comment.
Now that you have the county ordinance.
Yeah, hazardous vegetation ordinance. Well, so first of all, the beetle kill may or may not fall within the tenets of that hazardous vegetation ordinance. The HazVeg ordinance is very similar to the 4291 rules and regulations. It just has to do with land that has habitable structures and does not have habitable structures. So, sometimes we can, but there are times where those beetle kill trees are not within the scope of that has-veg ordinance defensible space. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we have an ongoing contract with Caltrans and we can work on their easement. Frankly, it's more of us encouraging and or directing Caltrans to remove those trees versus us going in and doing it. They've got the crews and the equipment to do it. We just have to make it known to them. So I'll take a look at that, and Chief Egan can take a look at that as well. And we'll look at that pocket. If it's the same pocket that I think this person's referring to, that's pretty easy one to mitigate, I think.
What I was going to ask you
before
the first.
It's like 5 trees and
Every time I come by.
yeah, we should be able to nip those. So. Any other questions?
Nope. We have one more.
Looks like we have another public comment on this one on Zoom. Caroline Glenn asked about the city volunteers. She said you didn't mention their health. The city fire department volunteers, ? How many of those were in Colfax city limits? That last question probably.
So I did mention City of Colfax as part of our combined effort, our 5 county stations in the city of Colfax. Our volunteers are always a great part of that combined effort and work very closely with our unified response. Thank you. Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to item 5, public hearing. Item 5A, Lori, delinquent sewer service charges and refuse collection fees. Thank you very much, Lori.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Lori Van Groningen, the Finance Director. We're here tonight to talk about the annual process of collecting our delinquent sewer and garbage charges on the county tax rolls. This is authorized by Colfax Municipal Code Title 8 and Title 13. We started the process back in May where we compiled a list of all the accounts that were more than 60 days delinquent. We notified all the property owners of that status. We noticed this public hearing this evening as part of the requirements. And so what we'll be looking for at the end of the public hearing tonight is to get council to approve the resolutions to place these collection charges on the county tax rolls. In your package, there's a list of the accounts. When we produced this report, we had 48 sewer accounts that were delinquent for about $84,000. This is a moving number every year. I announce this number, excuse me, and then we generally get more payments in. So historically, that number will go down before we get to the actual tax roll process. Same thing with the garbage. Currently, there were 13 accounts for about $5,000 in the account. So with that, I guess we could open the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Open the public hearing. And do we have any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, we'd ask if there's any public that would want to give testimony on the public hearing, and if there is none, we can close it and bring it back to the council.
Do we have any public? No. No. All right, if we have no public comment, I'll close the public hearing. And council, do you have any questions? No. Okay.
Motion.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Motion to approve putting this on the county's tax rolls.
Is that a motion to approve both resolutions?
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Thank you, Lori. Okay, move on to item 6, consent calendar. Items of routine in nature and will be approved by a blanket motion. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Mayor Loman, can I interrupt? Do we have a public comment on item 6E? The wastewater backup diesel powered generator replacement project?
Thank you.
Just read it.
Yeah.
The public comment I received on Zoom says, my name is Jason with Medich Electric. We have been the on-call electrical contractor for the city over the last 4 years, as well as servicing the existing 5 generators within the wastewater system. We have working knowledge of all the lift stations and the plant. We bid on this project, and while we are 5% over the lowest bid, I believe there is more to consider before voting on this. We're a local company to Placer County. Our employees and families are residents of Placer County, and our money is spent in Placer County. The company that is up for awarding the contract, per their website, does $2 billion a year with over 7,000 employees and one of the largest contractors in the United States. The other point I want to make is that we work every day in Placer County and know the air quality requirements. Our bid is to complete the job without a 10% contingency. Resident Electric will use the contingency money up because Lift Station 1 located at the high school will need additional emissions requirements and will add additional cost using this 10% up and costing the city more than our proposed contract price. Please consider this buying local and supporting a local small business. Thank you.
Yes, or Mick.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of that item so we can discuss it.
Second. Favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's have some discussion on item 6E. Nick?
You know, Mr. Mayor, I'm always sympathetic to local companies that are outbid, but the law is very clear. You must, if you're going to award the contract, award it to the lowest responsible bidder. That is Rosendin in this circumstance. There's no provisions for considering local contractors in the process. So your choice is to either approve the agreement as presented or to decline to approve and rebid the project. Those are your choices.
Thank you. Do we have any comments on this item? Other public comment? All right.
Do we have the bids in here? I don't know why I'm not finding it.
If you do know off the top of your head, Wes, it might be helpful to know how far off they were by.
Unfortunately, I don't know the total number that they were short by, but again, as Nick pointed out, because we looked at all the parameters on there, is that we were required to take the lowest bidder. We're hopeful for that Medrich would have, that's what we do a lot of work with them, but unfortunately in the circumstances.
So what's the impact if we rebid it?
We have a timeline to get this project completed, with lead time for the generators and stuff. There's a good chance that we could run up to the end of that timeline to complete it next year, because I understand the generators lead time is quite significant at this purchase of those. Then the installation, we got to work around wet seasons, the timing, everything's got to work out right. We got to kind of combat the PS issues kind of going on. So we got a very narrow window of time.
Other than the end date, right? If we were to rebid this, it's most likely both vendors will come back with a reduced price to get the bid.
That's a possibility.
Which is, which is good for the city. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the risk. It could go up as well.
I just make sure everybody hears the trade-offs. Right? So the trade-off would be, if we rebid it, we could end up with a lower price. We could end up with a higher price because we know how all materials have been going up in the last 3 or 4 months. And we could run a risk on the end date.
That's correct.
Okay.
Wes, where did the money come from for this other thing? It says Cal OES released grant opportunities. Where did that come from? PSPS?
The PSPS event that we experienced in the recent past, Cal OES put out a grant statewide for any jurisdiction that experienced significant impacts from the PSPS events to apply for it. Had we received the proportional share we should have received, we should have only received about $33,000. We were actually successful in receiving $300,000 for the generator replacements for our lift station. With that and the repurchase of the current generators, because they can't be repurposed in the state, which is another $58,000 revenue in. and the federal stimulus money that can be used specifically for sewer and revenue losses make the project with no impacts to the current sewer.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. And we'll move on to item 7 now, public comment. Public comment is for items that are not on the agenda. If you have any comments for other items, please use this time now. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any general public comment? Hey, Foxy.
Foxy McCleary, 127 Sanders Lane. It's not really a comment. I just wanted you guys to know that we just lost one of our veterans on the 13th of May. His name was Jerry Hagman. He was from the Hagman family. He did 2 tours, not 1, but 2 tours in Vietnam and Cambodia. And we just lost him, and I want you guys to know that. Thank you.
Thanks, Foxy.
Any other public comment?
Swend Miller. I live on North Swiss Lane. The 3rd of July is coming up, right? And, you know, when that event is over, traffic is hell. So why don't we ask the police that are at the event to direct traffic after the fireworks is over? I mean, it's really a dangerous situation because in past years, it has taken an hour to drive what ought to take 5 minutes. So I noticed that when these traffic jams occur, you're just stuck. You can't go anywhere. And pretty soon, boom, traffic starts moving. And that's because someone is directing it. So I really believe it would really be a good idea during the 3 events of the year, the 3rd of July, Railroad Days, and the Winterfest, that we arrange to have traffic directed at the end of those events. Because, man, it'll save somebody's life, really, if we can do that. Thank you.
Ms. Schwinn?
Thanks, Ben.
Any other public comment on items not on the agenda? No? Okay. And now close public comment and we'll move on to item 8, council and staff reports. Marnie, you want to start?
Mayor, I have nothing to report.
Thank you. David?
Nothing to report at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I've got a couple items I'm going to bring up under the good of the order. I'll hold them for that.
I'm just going to say tomorrow night at 6 p.m. in the city council chambers, we'll be having the Placer Sierra Fire Safe Council meeting. It'll also be available on Zoom. The link is available on the Placer or the Fire Safe Council website and also on the Placer Fire Safe Council Facebook page if you're interested. Go ahead.
I have nothing to report.
All right, thank you. Wes?
One item I want to report out tonight. As everybody remembers, previously we worked with SACOG and did a sustainable downtown project where we looked at changing the streetscape and come up with a design at the end of it. Subsequent to that, we applied for a sustainable transportation planning grant for the downtown streetscape project. The city was successful. We got the notice yesterday that we received $238,000 for that project. That project will include some more outreach so we can look at the design even further and get some feedback. And then ultimately we'll end up with a 30% design plans that will make us competitive for an ATP project funding, hopefully in the future, so we can continue that progress and the revitalization of the downtown.
Yeah, and this is really important because that first design was just a mock-up to be able to try to get some funding. This design is the real thing. So we need everybody, if you're interested in what the downtown is like, this is the time when we kick this off that you have to participate. The other one's just a mock-up. So if you don't like it, it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just to get us into the planning cycle. But this one coming up is the real thing. So we just need everybody's help as we go through that.
We're gonna put a lot of effort into trying to reach out to the public to get everyone involved that we can. So if you can help with that effort to let people know, especially those of you that are very consistent about attending council meetings, then, you know, that's extremely helpful for us to try to get more people involved.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wes. All right, that concludes our council and staff reports. We'll go on to item 9, council business. Item 9A, Cooperative Fire Service Agreement with Placer County and amendment of Colfax Municipal Code Chapter 2.28, Fire Department. Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll introduce the item. This actually began several months ago when the council directed staff to examine and do a comprehensive review of the city's fire services. And it evolved into what's before the council tonight. There are 2 agenda items before the council tonight. The one the mayor just called is a proposed cooperative agreement between the county of Placer and the city of Colfax. 9B will be a mutual threat zone agreement, which is also part of the cooperative agreement. There are 3 agreements relevant to the cooperative agreement, and I'd like to go through them very briefly. The cooperative agreement is a pass-through agreement with the county of Placer. By pass-through agreement, I mean what it does is it provides the same services to the city of Colfax that the county receives from CAL FIRE. The second agreement that's relevant is the CAL FIRE agreement itself, and that's the agreement between CAL FIRE and the county. That is relevant only because it describes the scope of services that the city will get from the county. And the third agreement is the mutual threat zone agreement. We'll address that under item 9B. The agreement itself, the scope of services under this proposed agreement is fairly broad, and I'd like to go through that just briefly so for the benefit of the public. There are 7 categories of services that the county proposes to provide through the cooperative agreement. Those are emergency fire protection, basic life support services, advanced life support services, dispatch services, land use and pre-fire planning services, suppression cost recovery, and mutual aid. Each of those categories has subcategories. For example, the emergency fire protection includes medical and rescue response, commercial, residential, wildland fire protection, prevention, investigation, hazardous material incident response, emergency vehicle extraction, hazardous conditions response, emergency medical and rescue response, public service assistance, and management support services. So this is a very detailed scope of work, and it's that detailed, first because it's in the county agreement with CAL FIRE, and second, one of the concerns that council expressed was, hey, we need to know what we're getting if we're going to enter a new agreement with the county, and so that is there. The term of this agreement is proposed agreement is 3 years. It's interesting. This is what I call a head scratcher for a lawyer, because the law says this agreement, once approved, cannot be terminated by either party except by vote of the people. So if the city is dissatisfied with the services, it can't terminate. If the county is dissatisfied, it can't terminate. I don't even think both sides can agree to terminate. So you are bound, you have to assume, I think, that you are bound by this agreement for 3 years. Cost is spelled out. Initial cost is $75,000 a year for year 1. Year 2, it's $77,250. Year 3 is $79,567.50. That's because there's a 3% increase from year 1 to year 2 and year 2 to year 3. The county has the right, if CAL FIRE increases its cost to the county by greater than 5%, the county can come back to the city and say, hey, we need more money because under this contract, and that would obviously result in a negotiation. And there may be some extra services that city requests.
Quick question on that. Does that mean that if it's above 5%, that it's not mandatory?
It says that
they renegotiated.
That is correct. The agreement says the county can request an increase.
Okay.
So that would result in a negotiation. And if there are extra services, I can't imagine what they are because I'm not the technical guy here, but they would be billed separately. Equipment. The city currently owns a fair amount of equipment. All of that equipment will be transferred to the county. The county will then assume responsibility for maintenance, repair, and replacement of the equipment. Any equipment, if this contract should terminate either at the end of 3 years or for whatever reason, any equipment that is remaining in the county possession then gets returned to the city. And that was done, Mr. Fatula, I think you made that request. The county included that in this most recent draft. Buildings, Colfax owns 2 fire stations. It will continue to own those 2 fire stations, and Colfax will, at its own cost and expense, maintain the fire stations and the grounds. Probably the most sensitive part of this agreement is the volunteer fire department. The draft agreement provides for a 60-day transition period whereby any member of the Colfax volunteer fire department who qualifies will be able to transition into the county's volunteer system. That's, by the way, the basis. I've suggested a minor ordinance change. You have the legal right to do this. I just wanted to make sure your ordinance is consistent with the law. So we'll get to that later. That's part of my picky nature, I think. A couple of questions have arisen today that I'd like to address before we move on to. The first one, and these came off of either Facebook or email or something, that's last minute things that came up. One complaint we heard was that everything is being turned over to CAL FIRE. That's no more true under this proposed agreement than it is under the existing agreement. The existing agreement is between the county and the city. The new agreement will be between the county and the city. This is nothing's being turned over to CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE will obviously be the fire chief and manage all the fire responses, but nothing is being turned over. One primary difference is the detailed scope of work, so everybody will know exactly the type of services they're getting. And obviously the costs are going to go up. The current contract provides for $25,000 a year base fee.
So what's not getting turned over to the county? We're providing them we're giving them our equipment and our apparatus.
Yeah, but the contract is not with CAL FIRE. It says the complaint was everything's being turned over to CAL FIRE. That's not correct. Our contract would be with the county.
That's just a nomenclature misunderstanding, but just to clarify, there is a transfer of assets and there is a transfer of employees. So just to
the county.
To the county.
Correct.
But I think that's just a nomenclature misunderstanding there.
And maybe, again, that's my picky nature. I had to pick up on that. The base cost is going up from $25,000 to $75,000. Interestingly, though, we did a 5-year run on the cost. Low cost for per year for Colfax has been $46,000 and change. High has been $75,000. Staff, we don't know this, but staff does not anticipate that this contract is really going to cost that much more than it currently does. The second comment I saw was that the Colfax Fire Department is being disbanded. Not quite. It's being, if this is approved, it will be integrated into the county system. We're not doing away with the municipal code provisions that provide for the volunteer fire department. If this contract ends, the city will be able to reinstitute its volunteer fire department as a Colfax Fire Department if it wants to do so. Now, I don't know how this affects operations, because I'm not in operations. I'm sure the chief could probably explain that better than me. There's a comment that there's going to be a loss of local control. I think that's more of an operational question. As I understand it, the command structure is going to remain exactly as it is now. It's not going to change, so you'll be reporting that I think Chief Estes will still be the chief, and Battalion Chief Egan will still be the battalion chief, and the chain of command will remain exactly as it is. There's a concern that there's going to be a loss of equipment. I've already said the equipment's going to be transitioned to the county. Anything remaining at the end of the contract will come back. There was a concern that the city should specify the type of equipment that it's going to need. Staff's position on that is that's up to the experts who are fighting the fires to figure out, not something we can necessarily put in the contract itself. That'll come up on a case-by-case basis. And there was a question about, did we adequately consider, or are there other viable options? I think that's an operational question. That really is a question for the fire staff. So alternatives from staff's perspective are you can either approve the agreement that's before you tonight and do the first reading of the ordinance, or you can decline to approve the agreement that's before you tonight. If you decline to approve the agreement that's before you tonight, staff will need direction, and of course, we'll carry out whatever direction you give us. So that's my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Is that enough?
Thank you. If you guys don't mind, I'd like to open this up to public comment. You guys okay with that going first? Okay. We'll go ahead and start public comment on this item. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
I'd like to respectfully ask that if we do have public comment on the Zoom, that those people are refrained to the city limits, not people in the sphere. I don't know how we would do that, but I just want that on record.
You can't restrict public comment.
Location, anybody can come from wherever.
Anybody can be affected by our decision-making and has the right to comment.
Okay.
Great. You want to start off with the digital comments? Thank you.
Sure. We have a comment on Zoom, a question from Brian. What is the asset value of the equipment being turned over? And when this contract expires, will the assets be returned?
We don't know the asset value. We didn't do the evaluation. As Mick pointed out, if the county still has the assets that we turned over at the end of the term of this contract, those assets will be returned to us. But if they replace a unit with a new unit, that new unit stays with the county.
Another public comment from Caroline Glenn. With what the chief of CAL FIRE has to say about the increase in our fire danger, I ask again, does it make sense to let our local volunteer fire department go? We know that allowing the county to take over will mean the loss of at least 2 trucks that do not meet the county code requirements and the loss of our local volunteer station that will also not meet the county code. How do we justify letting manpower and equipment go with no guarantee of our volunteers will be picked up? We lose 11 men. Auburn is not a hop, skip, and a jump away from Colfax. We are 15 miles, 15 minutes away. That makes a huge difference. How is Auburn or any other company that is more than 15 minutes away back up when we have 11 volunteers and equipment at our disposal as needed? How does that make us feel safer? How does it justify the loss of a station that has been part of our community since 1910? I believe there is more to consider here before a vote is made on this issue.
I can come up and address some of those questions. I think you're best suited for this.
Sure, thanks, Wes, and good evening again, council, and I appreciate the questions. I'll do my best to try to answer them. With respect to the question that was just asked on Zoom, there really would be no operational difference in the volunteer staffing of our station here, 36 in Colfax. It is not our intention to decrease the amount of staffing or response to the city of Colfax. It's actually our desire to increase the volunteer ranks within the city of Colfax. The only difference when it comes down to brass tacks, the only difference is that they would be volunteers for the county of Placer instead of volunteers for the city of Colfax. The county of Placer and CAL FIRE in our cooperative agreement has had this relationship with the city of Colfax contractually since 2001. And we treat the city of Colfax as one of ours. And that would not change at all, just based on the volunteers becoming city volunteers to county volunteers.
Okay. Do we have any more online? Oh. No? Okay. If you'd like, please come up to the mic and you can provide your comment.
My name is Rhonda, by the way, and my friends call me Ronnie. I didn't quite understand what was going on with the equipment and the process for the volunteer firefighters here in Colfax. Now, are we going to be, how do I want to put this? are we going to be transferred over to Placer County?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
we will still be operating out of the same fire department?
Hopefully.
Okay, very good. Because I was voted in on the association and I used to be with Placer Hills Fire. And before that, I was with Rock Creek before they consolidated. And it's a privilege for me to be with the Colfax Volunteer Fire Department. And I want you guys to know that they do an excellent, excellent job. And I am very pleased to be a part of all of that. Hopefully we can keep on with our tradition. It goes back a long, long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, along with the volunteer firefighters, we also have to look out what's best for the city. This is a comprehensive protection, fire protection. I've been coming to the workshops. I think I've made it to almost every one.
You made it both.
What's that?
You made it to both.
Yeah. So in following this, a lot of effort's been put in on both sides to make this a good contract. I think this is a good contract. I've heard some other things go on about, I heard within town that people were worried about a guaranteed job for the volunteers. If you go to CAL FIRE, you go to the county and full disclosure, my son works for CAL FIRE way up north in Lassen area. If you advance in rank or do anything else, you automatically go on a 1 year, what's it called, probation period. And you got to cut it. It's that simple. If you come on new, you got to go on a 1 year probation period. So I don't see any problem with that myself. I mean, most private sectors have the same thing where you go on a probation period when you're hired on. It's that simple. We could not afford for wildland fire comes near Colfax and starts threatening it. There is no way we could afford to pay the state what they're going to charge us in the end if we don't have this contract. And the other thing, when we went to the insurance and went to that ISO thing that we did, if I read that right, the volunteers were there for 32% of the calls. Am I correct in that?
I think it would be appropriate if we're going to bring up the call percentages that we bring up pre-COVID and post-COVID numbers, just to make sure that, because this is a question that came up to the public earlier. So I'm not sure if you guys have those statistics ready, but that would be really helpful to bring up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because we really need this protection. We need the help. Always have. I came on council in 2008, worked with Chief Paulus. I can remember when he took the D9 cats up there on the other side of the river, cut the swaths across when the fires were headed in this direction. So we had fire breaks, everything else. And that was all CAL FIRE. That was not our volunteers. And, you know, we need this to help save the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Well.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Will Stockman, 525 Pine Street in Colfax. A famous military strategist said, "You cannot prepare for what you think might happen, but you must prepare for what you know can happen." After wildfire destroyed Paradise, California, we now know what can happen to communities like Colfax that exist in extreme wildfire threat areas. The other thing we know in Colfax is that trains come off the track. In the last 8 years, it's happened twice here in Colfax. And the last time it happened, I was the mayor. And I can tell you that my heart rate and my blood pressure was off the charts when I got into town and saw it was 3 tank cars that had come off the rails. Colfax has been lucky on derailments. We haven't had the big explosions. We haven't had hazardous waste released. But that doesn't mean we're going to be lucky the next time. And what we do know is it will happen again. The way to prepare for that eventuality and for the wildfire Steve was talking about is to vote yes on this contract. So I've got to say, this should be one of the easiest votes you have to make as a member of the city council. Keep the city in mind. We don't want to be paradise again. Thank you.
Sir?
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Dave Gard, 454 North Main Street. I also own Winter Chevrolet.
Hey Dave, I'm sorry, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you, so I know the folks at home probably can't either.
Oh, okay. My name is Dave Gard, 454 North Main. I also own Winter Chevrolet. I was also on the council and made the original agreement with the Office of Emergency Services in 2001, which was very controversial at the time because of the problems with the volunteer fire department. But at the time, the city was in big trouble. We were in violation of every regulation. They had no money, no training, no nothing, but I'll go on for it. So we made a deal with the Office of Emergency Services, who contacted us with, at the time, CDF. After back and forth, we came to the agreement. They provided fire chief services for $500 a month, I think it was. I don't have the exact figures. In the meantime, what probably most people don't know is that not only did the Office of Emergency Services and CDF provide the services for fire chief, they brought in equipment at no charge. They brought in oxygen masks, this, that. They did every kind of thing you can believe for the city of Colfax. And they provided these services top notch since then. So with the resources that the Office of Emergency Services, Placer County, and now CAL FIRE have, it only makes sense. There's not a lot of options, but they don't just ditch everything. They're part of the community. I would strongly suggest you keep the partnership going. They have done a tremendous job since that happened. And in fact, when it took place, the volunteers at the time, they had the news stations outside and everything else, had said if there was a fire, they'd let my house burn down. Those same fire department volunteers came to me 6 months later, almost 9 months, about 6 of them, and said, thank you. Because they got training, they got equipment, they got the stuff that they didn't even know they didn't have and need. So OES, Placer County, well, and now CAL FIRE did a job that you can't even imagine. And I think you need to keep that relationship going for the long term. They've done a great job, and it'd be a mistake. And you don't really have any other options that would really serve the city and the public well. So thank you.
Council, can I clarify just a couple of those numbers you were asking about? Okay. Again, Brian Estes, so in respect to your question, the 3 year, so we don't have 11 volunteers, we have 7. And the 3-year percentage of response from our volunteer ranks over the 3 years of 18, 19, 20 has actually been 26%. The response from County Fire, CAL FIRE has obviously been 100% from our station at Station 30. And I think just in respect to the member of the public's questions about equipment and facilities and that, really the original agreement that's existed since 2001 had the kind of four elements to it. And one of them was management and training of the volunteers and facilities and equipment. Frankly, in that time period, there has not been an investment in, by the city in equipment, in fire equipment. And I think we've all had very open and honest discussions about that through the workshop periods. And so, when the council came to us, to the county, and asked us to discuss this and come back with a proposal to the council, really the most effective and efficient way for us to manage this into the future was to really assess and acquire those pieces of fire apparatus, which are mandated under very strict NFPA standards. It's not just like a passenger vehicle going down the road. And by taking that into our greater county fleet, which is really the same thing that our 5 volunteer companies in Dry Creek, Ophir, Page, Thermaland, and Sheridan, that they did over time. We took in those individual fire district or fire company pieces of equipment, built them into our larger fleet replacement plan, and we've replaced those with more modern pieces of equipment, still serving those local communities. And that's certainly our intention here in the city of Colfax. It's really no different. I don't want there to be a misperception that there's kind of this big ogre coming in and just deconstructing the history and the value of the volunteer fire department. That's absolutely not it. We have always been committed to the volunteers here in Colfax. We will always be committed to the volunteers here in Colfax. They're just going to be part of a bigger team. And I would argue we're going to bring a greater force multiplier to serve the citizens of Colfax. And as the gentleman said, when we do bring the resources of the county and the state, it's to the benefit of Colfax. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. And the volunteers are very, very important. The comment that was made about the hop, skip, and jump, if I spoke incorrectly about that, I was referring to the helicopter based at Auburn, not fire equipment. It is 15 miles, and we do have a regional response up and down the 80 corridor from Alta, Colfax, our mutual aid agreement with Placer Hills Fire Protection District, and of course, North Auburn and Bowman. And all of those are part of an integrated response, including our volunteer company, Dutch Flat, our volunteers, of which Mayor Lohman is a part of here in the city of Colfax. None of that would change. Absolutely none of it would change. It's just part of a bigger, more integrated team. And I think by the city retaining the maintenance of the facilities, it's much more consistent with the agreement you have with the sheriff's office. And really, our council and city council tried to mirror this to the agreement that the city has with the county sheriff's office. You maintain the facility, so you have that control, but the apparatus, much like the sheriff's office, you don't own the police cars. The sheriff's office maintains those patrol vehicles, and we would maintain at the county level that fire apparatus in order to best serve the citizens in the city of Colfax. So I hope that was maybe clarifying to some of those questions.
Chief, I had a question since we got you back up here. Yes. Both our former mayors here have expressed concerns that if we don't approve this specific contract at this time right now, or don't get an extension, we're going to be left hanging by the county and by CAL FIRE for emergency wildland response.
I don't think anyone said anything about anyone leaving anyone hanging, but the discussion is for the contract to happen tonight. But it's really not about wildland fires, as you well know, Mayor. This is about fire protection for the city of Colfax.
Yes.
The jurisdiction for the SRA around the city of Colfax, as you well know, is with the state of California.
Yes.
The jurisdiction currently on this night for a wildland fire in the city of Colfax is the city of Colfax. Okay?
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I wanted to add a note quickly, as this is our first night doing a successful hybrid meeting. So we have some people on Zoom, and I just wanted to let them know that we will read their public comment, but public comment cannot be an ongoing conversation. So if we receive 9 or 10 questions after a public comment, I just wanted the people on Zoom to know that we're not going to be reading those, as we're taking their initial statement as their public comment. On the same note, I have a public comment on Facebook really quick. Caroline McCauley, if Placer County chooses to sell the equipment and not replace it during contract time, such that they cannot return it when the contract ends, will Placer County financially compensate Colfax for those items? Why is a minimum equipment on site guarantee not possible on the contract? Yes, it's an operational decision for best equipment, but there should still be a minimum standard for operational fire station. That completes public comment on this side.
Thank you. Any more public comment from the audience? Phil?
My name's Phil Begin. I was a volunteer firefighter with Colfax for 10 years. My last 5 years as captain under Chief Paulus. I saw the volunteer department go through its ups and downs over that 10-year period. You spoke very fast when you were describing the contract. There seems to be a lot of questions left open. The volunteer department is as good as its leadership. And frankly, from what I understand, the leadership right now seems to be down on volunteers. Seems to consider them somewhat inadequate. There also seems to be this notion that magically, if we have this county with the contract, all these resources will be available to Colfax. Through the contract with CAL FIRE, those resources were already available. So let's not be misled. When I was on the volunteer department, we were very well trained. I came in under Jeff Brand. I was trained by Joe Tenike. He had fine-tuned us. He trained us to CAL FIRE standards. If you think the volunteer fire department doesn't meet your standards, then maybe you should look at who's doing the training. We fought fire all over the state. I went on over a dozen strike teams. We used to cover the CAL FIRE station. There were times when we were the first at scene. There were times when I came in, single person on one engine, and I saved the bacon of CAL FIRE because we were low on resources. And there just seems to be things being put in place and barriers being put in place by the very people who are in control of this department, whether it be under the county contract, it's still under CAL FIRE, that seem to be wanting to limit volunteer response and prevent them from responding with everything that they can. That's not a good thing for the city of Colfax, whether you're in the contract or not with the county. I saved lives over a 10-year period. I saved property. I saved homes over a 10-year period. I was first at scene, made a report on conditions, got things going, and helped get things settled out, even though I was by myself on an engine. And we were proud to be volunteers, and we were proud to be volunteers working with CAL FIRE because we were well trained. And when Jeff Brand sees you on an incident and says, "You guys look just like a Kenny CAL FIRE crew to me," that's a pretty good compliment. And the harder they trained us, the more we shined. And now all of a sudden, we're not qualified to cover the CAL FIRE station anymore. Are we qualified to go out of county anymore? Probably not. We had the same training. So the volunteers in this town serve the community. I did it to serve the community. And I think I served it well. And I was rewarded. It was satisfying to know that I was serving the community in a viable way. I think you shouldn't rush into this contract. I think it needs to be considered more carefully. And maybe it should be put before the people of Colfax, who are the ones who may end up suffering from volunteers being restricted from responding and doing their job. because people maybe don't consider volunteers as able. I'm telling you, I fought fire all over the state.
3 minutes.
Just a couple comments. We were part of in this region. When we went out on Wildfire and a strike team, if it was a strike team from this region, and that included the volunteer departments, those strike teams were what the operational people wanted on those fires, because we had the experience, we had the training, and I worked with city departments, professional paid departments that couldn't do the job as well as we did. When we were put alongside any paid department out all over the state, we did just as well. You couldn't tell the difference. So don't be afraid of the fact that they're called volunteers, because if you train them and you push them, they'll rise to the occasion. And if you support them, they'll surprise you.
Thank you. We still do. Another comment? Matt?
Good evening, Matt Christensen, current volunteer with Colfax Fire. Been an operator there since 2008. Had a little stint when I moved out of state and came back in 2017. Currently, I definitely echo what Phil said. I fought fire all over the state with him. We were treated very, very well as a professional fire department, basically. Since then, not the case. This place is a disaster. Ever since I came back, I show up to a call, an engine won't start. It won't go into pump. There's a quarter tank of diesel. How am I going to show up and help anybody when there's zero standard in this department? I want anyone to answer that. I came back to help give back to this community, to show where I came from, to train people in the future. When people come, they're not treated with respect. The trainings are haphazard because we're volunteers. There's no standard anymore. Like Phil said, it could be from the top down, but it's also the environment. We are not given the tools we needed from the council since 2001. Our newest engine is a 2001. That's the one that wouldn't go into pump when I went to respond to a break fire about 6 months ago. How do you expect me to want to continue to volunteer when I don't even have the support? If I go on that fire and I use the turnouts that I was sized for 10 years ago, guess what? I need to get those cleaned after the fire. Where am I getting those turnouts for the next fire? You don't provide me with those. So you want me to wait, and I'll respond to fires and take that cancer home to my kids because you didn't provide me with proper gear. You haven't bought me turnouts for 10 years. This is all on you as council. Tonight should not be we haven't known about this. You haven't funded the fire department this whole time. Shame on you for not wanting this. This should make us all better. We will have more support. Engine 36 has been out of service for more than a year. When you start it up, it doesn't even have PSI in the brakes. You have to sit there and smell diesel fumes for 5 minutes until you can respond out of the station. Even if you open the doors, it sits there and lingers. The next guy coming in goes respond. Here you go, cancer. Keep breathing it in. And this is what you guys want to keep passing along to more volunteers? How does that make sense? These guys are coming to standards. If we want volunteers, maybe we should have treated them with respect, right? Give them what they needed to respond on calls and help people here. You know how many boot drives I did standing out there so I can put rope rescue equipment on the rescue that you should have provided me with? Why do I have to stand out there, beg the barrier people coming on Memorial Day to give me money so I can go help people on the trail that live here? How does that make sense? I don't know if they're going to come in and take away all our equipment. I hope they do. What we have is a pile of shit. We have 3 engines that barely pump with all of them. The rescue, half the time you open it up, oh, guess what? There's no standards, so stuff is put away where it's not supposed to be. Nothing was restocked because no one cares there. If they come and take us over, there's actually going to be a standard. There would actually be water in the engine when I go to respond it because someone didn't have time to put water back in. What's that make me look like when I go respond that to any fire? What happens when there's no oxygen in the tank when your kid's dead and I'm trying to breathe for him? There's zero standard there. If they take us over, that should all change. And if it doesn't, shame on me. But I can't change everything over there. I've come back to help and I can't do anything. My hands are tied. If you don't vote yes on this, I'm probably already quitting, but if you don't vote yes on this, you are crazy. There's no reason not to. People, all this public comment, oh, local control of what? I don't show up because I'm embarrassed if I'm gonna show up if something's gonna work. You want control of that? Go ahead. How can I get someone to come volunteer when I can't train them because there's no equipment? Here, let's give you this size turnouts. That should work. Where is the air barrier in that to protect them if they go into a fire? When's the last time those SCBAs that will protect their lungs have been tested and actually make sure they're actually going to be safe? I feel very emotional about this because I started in this agency in 2008. It gave me the start. I am now a professional firefighter. And this place gave me my start. And it could do that for a lot of people. But in the current environment and the way it's going, that's not going to happen. This place is a sinking ship. And if something doesn't change, which it should tonight with the yes vote, then nothing's going to change. Like, it's just going to keep going downhill. You're going to keep exposing these guys, firefighters, that you people in the public say they respect and want help. You're just going to keep exposing them to all this that they don't even, the new guys don't even know what they're coming into. This is all on all of you. You say we have other options. What were these options? Why haven't you researched this over the last month? If you were smart about it, you would told Cal Fire to put a Type 1 engine over at that station over there. Where was that? We got 2 Type 3s over there. Those are wildland engines. Why didn't you think about that? There's not these options you just magically are saying. This is the only option we have right now, or continue on a sinking ship. There probably was options if you guys did anything to help us. But you haven't done anything to help us as volunteers. There's nothing. We barely make it by. Most of the equipment on that rescue was bought, like I said, by boot drives, by me going out of county, by Phil going out of county. For years, spend time away from our family, we would have to steal water and put it on top of the engine to bring back the freaking station because we had no water to drink. We would hoard it. We would purposely break our tools out there because you guys provided us with such crappy equipment. Previous council members. This place was an embarrassment, and it's only the way it is because of all the dedication that guys like Sean Loman have put in. But he can't do this all on his own. I commend you with how long you've stayed on this department. I don't know how you have, with the way the city council treats us. It's not right. I don't know if they're going to treat us like crap. I don't know if they're going to take all our stuff away. But if they do, hopefully it keeps someone healthier. It's going to let someone go home at the end of the night because the brakes didn't fail on your engine because it hasn't been tested. It wasn't worked on by some random mechanic that doesn't know fire equipment. I'm sorry. Thank you for the time. I hope you make the right decision because it's too late for you to make any other decision, truly. For the past 20 years. I understand the city doesn't have money. You're not going to find a pot of gold, but there's things you could have done way before this. Too late.
Thank you, Matt. Other public comment? I heard go real quick. And then Zach, you can go after. Thanks.
Number one, just because you're a volunteer firefighter doesn't mean that you don't deserve the respect. Every time we put those turnouts on, we take a chance with our life because you never can tell what's going to be out there. You can't tell what you're gonna see, what you're gonna have to do. And, you know, if we need more training, if we need more equipment, give it to us so that we can do our jobs properly. Otherwise, I don't like to hear that volunteer firemen don't know what they're doing and they need help getting stuff done. We may need help, but yeah, we need some help getting stuff that we need to be able to perform our job properly. So, you know, I've got roots dating back to 1800s, my family. And I've been in the Auburn area and Colfax. I've been in Auburn my whole life. And, you know, I fought fire since 1990. And I have all the respect in the world for the volunteer firemen as well as the paid by calls. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Zach?
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Haslett, former Colfax volunteer. One of the guys that covered Station 30 for 35 days a couple years ago with you guys.
Good times.
Sean Lohman's actually the guy who brought me on to the fire department. I was a professional firefighter in Colorado. Moved here. My search went good in California initially, so I got a different job. But I got into volunteering, joined the Colfax Fire Department, spent a lot of time, you know, I'm as motivated as any other volunteer you've ever seen out there. Volunteers are as quality guys as you'll ever get. What I want to talk to you guys about today is the fact that in my entire, since 2015, since being with Colfax, now with the Alta Fire Department, where I live now, my kids go to school here in Colfax. There's never been one CAL FIRE person that's ever talked down, didn't support, wasn't there for any volunteer I've ever been around. If anything, the respect or lack of respect was a reverse path for them or the service they're providing. My biggest thing for all of you, because what you do today is actually going to affect the future of other districts. Alta, we have a temporary agreement in place, much like your current agreement is, right? CAL FIRE has protected Alta, has protected Colfax as long as I've been here, and you can go many years back. It wasn't volunteers. I've seen the Facebook posts. There's a lot of misinformation. It's not your volunteers that are saving your baby in the fire. It's CAL FIRE. If you turn around and look at all the guys back here, that's what you're paying for. The volunteers support everything they do. The volunteers are great guys. They are killers at what they do, without a doubt. But look at your son, look at your brother, look at your father. Do you want those guys taking care of them inside your city limit, or are you waiting for me to come 35 minutes from work to do it? Right? Who do you want protecting your people? We're going to be there every chance we get, but it's volunteers, and I appreciate you, sir, back there, everything you did. But the times have changed. I came in Colorado. The farther east you go, the volunteers become more and more like to the East Coast. Right? All the way to where there's almost volunteers everywhere. That's all they have. Right? But here, we're in a position that's different. There's no such thing as CAL FIRE in other states. There's little departments like yours trying to fend for themselves. You guys have a miracle here for $75,000. You are going to get millions of dollars worth of people and resources. Right? And you're leading the way for me and Alta to be able to do the same kind of agreement that's going to take care of my kids. Because we're going to copy what you're doing. We're going to take care of our constituents the right way by making sure they have 24/7 protection at all times. That's our job. Do I have a lot of pride? Do I love being a volunteer? Do I love being a paid staff guy? Absolutely. Do I miss it so much that that's why I devote? I haven't had a beer in almost 2 years. Because I come home every night, and I sit, and I get ready to try to protect somebody. Every night. While my kids are doing homework, while my wife wants me to do stuff.
Yeah, we miss you here.
I love being here. But all I'm saying at the end of the day, don't let this be about tradition or trying to hold on to things. Yeah, we used to chop trees down with axes, and before that, we did it with other things. Now we use chainsaws. We're all mountain folk. We use chainsaws now. We don't chop down a 30-inch tree with an axe. You got to grow at the time. This is the best thing you could ever have. The experience I had my first dispatch here in Colfax, I was used to running on a one-man engine. In 2008, when the crash happened, we got reduced to single-man engines out of 3 stations running 4,500 calls a year. A normal structural fire dispatch was one engine with one guy to find out if it's a real deal and then call for help. You guys get 8 engines, an air resource with a wildland threat, all kinds of other stuff coming to help you. The tradition of the volunteers, they need training. They need people to support them. CAL FIRE's always done that. The tradition on whether you have black uniforms or whether you have this kind of helmet or whether you're whatever it may be, CAL FIRE is going to provide the protection so that when our guys, our volunteers that you respect, that the community loves, gets treated with respect on the calls because they have the minimum standard of training to make sure they don't kill themselves. That's all that's being asked is repetitive training of everybody, not taken away. Now, I don't agree with all of California's strict guidelines on training and all the different things. That's not what I'm coming. I believe in volunteers. At the end of the day, you put water on fire, it kills a fire, right? It's been overcomplicated for many years, right? It doesn't matter. CAL FIRE is going to train the guys the right way. I left Colfax for kid issues, family issues, time issues. I was devoting so much of my time to something where we were not showing respect to CAL FIRE. We couldn't go to a training and get through a training without people popping off at CAL FIRE just because we don't like them. And it was reversed. It was never CAL FIRE to us. That's why I left. My kids, why devote your time to something you can't even go out and be proud of because you're worried about the next guy popping up next to you? I'm as dedicated a firefighter as anybody. I wish I could, go back 10 years, change things. I came to California, it just didn't work out. But I'm so proud to be a volunteer. I was happy to be in Colfax. I'm very happy to be in Alta. I can't wait to protect Alta the same way you guys are hopefully going to protect Colfax. The agreement you're about to put in place, there is no person that is not paid that devotes their 8 hours a day to this job to train your guys. There's nobody that can do it. I'm trying right now in Alta. I tried to do it in Colfax. There's nobody that's not devoting a full-time job to organizing and managing training for volunteers that's going to make it work. That's why you need this agreement. That's what you're getting from this. Station 30 is going to be the direct report for these guys. They're going to get training anytime they need. You're not going to miss out on anything. You can't lose in this agreement. 3 years from now, if you don't like it, that's fine. Matt was completely correct. That fire that burned down the community center, I was the one first in the engine waiting for 5 minutes trying to get air into that engine so that I could get there to help CAL FIRE try to put it out. That's the crap you guys have. If you're lucky, Placer County Fire will get rid of that crap for you before the 3 years is up, so you don't have to worry about it and figure out who you're going to pay to take it. And it's not to be mean or anything. I love Colfax. I love being a firefighter more than anything. I'm a volunteer at heart. I devote every night to the community. Every night I come home after I work 60 hours, right? Respect your volunteers. Times have changed. The days of what he used to do back there are gone. It's not a respect of volunteer issue. It's not anything else. Nobody's talking down about it. Who do you want protecting your son and your father? The people that are going to be there in 2 minutes. Not somebody coming from work. And you shouldn't be burdening your volunteers with so much burden on their shoulders that they're going to lose their jobs or risk losing their jobs to try to provide protection for their community. Have some respect. I left for 35 days. Yeah, there's laws in California that protect that kind of stuff, but who in here's had a job? That doesn't mean anything, right? So this is the best option you guys could ever see coming. You are getting millions of dollars of resources for 75 grand. You couldn't even pay a chief in today's world to manage your department for 75 grand. That's not even half of what a chief who's going to build this department back into the heydays, somebody who has the time to really devote to that. 75 grand? And you're getting 3 guys, just 3 of those call fire guys right there to man a station. Millions of dollars a year, at minimum, at least $2 million. $2 million. for an entire year's budget in the station and the resources. Look what you're getting for 75 grand. Every one of those people sitting back there, the guys who already left on. Plus, when they get to the dispatch, now you got resources coming from Alta, you got resources. Your structure fire that you had on Ben Taylor 2 weeks ago, Alta was here supporting you guys for that.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to be disrespectful to the speaker, but it's a 3-minute time limit for a speaker, so.
I apologize. I just wanted to get my point across, like coming without issue for anybody. I love Sean. I love the facts. I love everything, but think about your brothers, your mothers, your sons, and everything else. And that's what you're paying for right now. It has nothing to do with tradition. It has to do with a new way to make sure you're taking care of people that you love. That's it.
Thanks. Good. I think there's some misunderstanding with this on the contract. So currently we have a fire protection agreement with Placer County and we all work cooperatively together. So the options were to try and continue that contract where we work cooperatively together or become one agency. So either way, it didn't sound like we were actually going to lose anything or gain additional fire services. We already have this amazing mutual agreement with CAL FIRE. I've heard pretty much everybody that spoke up against this say, don't lose what you got with CAL FIRE. That's not the intention of any of the options that we had in front of us.
Operationally. So to be clear, Mr. Mayor, Brian Estes again, to be clear, the current fire agreement that we're currently operating for another week has 4 tenets to it, as you all know. It does not include dispatch services, which you're currently receiving for free. It does not include a response from the county fire CAL FIRE station at Station 30. It reflects the training of the volunteers, the management of the volunteers, the response of a battalion chief, and my services as the fire chief. So it is not quite what you just described. What we are describing now is a full service integration into the Placer County Fire Department, including everything that Nick described, from suppression, prevention, rescue, EMS, dispatching, and management and oversight of our volunteers assigned to the company. Thank you.
Mayor. Oh, go ahead.
Todd Leopold, Placer County. I just wanted to share with you because there was a comment made that nothing's changing. And as the chief spoke to, one of the key components of this is, and was spoken about just recently, the equipment that you currently have may be inadequate for the fire service in the city. We are taking on that responsibility and making sure that you have adequate fire equipment and making that investment for $75,000 a year. I will tell you the relationship with CAL FIRE, and as I've been the county exec, we talk about contracts. We talk about contracts as partnerships. CAL FIRE is a partner, has been a partner with us for 50 plus years, that we just entered into a 3-year agreement with them yesterday. That is the first time in the relationship that we've had where we had a multi-year contractual agreement with CAL FIRE. Again, this is a partnership, and I look at this contract in your consideration. It's not a contractual relationship. It is a partnership between the city and the county for fire service. And we have a 3-year agreement. It'll commensurate with the agreement we have with CAL FIRE. But at the end of the day, our intent is your citizens and residents are county residents, and we ensure and want to make sure that they have good fire service and it's adequate for our residents and for your residents. And that's the reason why the proposal that you asked us to provide to you was all about that. It was based on that relationship. So I want to share with you, because from a Placer County standpoint and from the operations, this is a partnership that we want to enter into with the city. And anytime that we have concerns or challenges, I think the relationship and the contract speaks to how your town manager or city manager, Wes, myself, work through these arrangements together. And so I just want to say this is not a contractual relationship as much as a partnership. And but there are tremendous benefits
that you're going to see. And I'll just share with you, to run and pay for a fire station will run you over $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.3 million a year. You are getting that service for $75,000. So I'm just saying the value that hopefully you are able to convey and see in the contract will serve the residents well into the future. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Todd, for the clarification. Do we have any more public comment? No? Josh?
Joshua Alpine, 21914 Placer Hills Road, 133 Culver Street. Sean, thank you. I mean, the volunteer department has done an outstanding job for this community for years. With all the maybe the faults of various political regimes and things, the fire service and the fire volunteers were constant. And I could see where you said as what's it, 106 years of tradition. I think the volunteer department was started in 115 or no 110.
Yeah.
So it's 110. So when the city was founded, that's a heck of a tradition, and it's a long thing. And I admire you fighting for that tradition and the history that goes in it. It's admirable, and there's a lot to be said, and I think that gets confused with some of the things out there. But where we are today is with the fire contract, and all five of you are fighting for passionately of protecting the city in the most efficient ways with the machines that you have. I think that what's laid out here, we have a contract that my understanding is in 6 days expires, right? There's another option, facts in front of you today that you're voting on to continue fire service with the partner, with the county, to protect the community. Shall we say, the community will always be protected, but having, let's say, conversations of how this will look is probably not the best position for the city to be in or its residents, not knowing that how things are going to be served, or there's not a permanent contract or something. I would just like to say that this is not only a problem that's happening to Colfax. In 2017, there was a municipal service review of all the Western Placer fire departments. And there was a lot of talks about how the business of providing adequate fire and ambulatory services were going to be delivered to the county. Overlaps, deficiencies in volunteer programs, changes in politics, whether it be ratings, there's fights that the volunteer rating was going to go away at one time, right? And make everybody a firefighter 1 or firefighter 2. But since that time, we've seen a lot of problems. So you've seen special districts in particular go out for bonds to try to just meet the services and raise costs. And other departments almost fall apart and consolidate. And right now, you have a chance of what we've seen. What's happening is departments are naturally consolidating or working together with either county contracts or with other special districts to try to provide services and try to provide those without cost, expanding through the roof. You have, I think the county rose to the occasion of, in Colfax's case, in that of Altus, up the hill. And there is multiple other places within the Western Placer jurisdiction, District 5, that are facing these same things. When looking at your contract, I just, briefly, it's a great contract. It's good. I think it sits where it is, and it leaves an opening in 3 years to reimagine, if you wanted to reimagine, how fire service could be delivered in this area and how it could be designed. And I think it's good. I think the challenges that it possesses right now is how to retain volunteers and that sense of community involvement and that ownership in a more in an organization that is greater than just a city. And that's kind of what I've been hearing all along. It's going to be a challenge. And this is only just one of many challenges. And I think that if we approach this contract right and approach the partnership right, there could be a lot of learning of how we could approach the greater challenge in all of Placer County of providing services and still pulling in volunteers to cooperate, be involved in the services that they provide to the communities. I was going to bring the municipal service review, but I grabbed the Martis Valley groundwater management plan by mistake. Plans on my thing, but yeah, that's a lot. I do encourage people as much to go and look at that study. It brought out a lot of conversations and to look at things. But right now, you have a solution in front of you, stabilizes things, but allows you 3 years to work to imagine something. There's partnerships in the special districts. If you could work with the county in the county's contract, Cal Fire, in building these relationships, then do it. But I think but I don't think going through this exercise is very good to last much longer, or to let our contract expire. That could be a little bit hard-hitting to a community that is as fragile as ours in a high-risk fire zone. With that, I wish you all the luck. Yeah, the facts are in front of you, and thank you for your time. Thanks, Josh, and thank you, Sean.
Tom Farnham, I live on West Oak Street, and I'm for this plan to move forward. But we need to acknowledge the volunteers. They did and do a wonderful job for us. And that's what's so cool about this city. So many people here are volunteering to make this city a better place. I mean, all of you basically are volunteers. And the fact that 5 ex-mayors are up here agreeing is really rare. So I hope you vote yes on this. Thank you, Tom.
Any other public comment? Sir?
Just real quick, I don't know if anybody misunderstood what I was saying earlier, because I've been in favor of the volunteer fire department. Matter of fact, in 1980, my service manager was the fire chief. My parts manager was the assistant fire chief, and every guy that worked in my shop was a fireman. That's why they built the one station that's across from the one body shop over there. And I was actually a volunteer fireman for many years, but then I had to quit because of a bad knee. My support of the volunteer fire department was always there. There became a time when it was actually dangerous for the firemen and the city and the residents. And that was because they didn't have the funding, the training, and everything. There was no way possible they could do it. I believe that you have the opportunity to hold the Office of Emergency Services, Placer County, accountable to help train train our volunteer firemen, the ones that can meet the standards and do it safety, not only for the public, but for themselves. So unless I'm misunderstanding it, I thought they were supposed to help train and maintain and let them join in with the Placer County as a community team and a community effort. And as all these years have gone by, and I've been here 40 years now, it would be very detrimental to pass up an opportunity to be a team, to pass up the opportunity to get the equipment and training and everything for the guys that can make it, because a lot of guys can't make it. The things have changed. People can't, the volunteers can't meet all the training a lot of times. They're either out of town, they work, this, that, it's got to be a joint effort. And when I was involved in the last stuff with obviously the CDF and CAL FIRE, boy, everybody was working good and I had heard nothing but positive stuff. So I would think that with the resources that OES has, Placer County and CAL FIRE, you really can't pass it up. And you can't pass it up just to keep all your community firefighters trained, your equipment up to date, all the stuff that needs to be done, where you've got the support of OES and CAL FIRE. So what I was saying before was with no intentions of ever wanting to dismantle or not respect the volunteer firefighter, because I think they're great. And, they've been doing it for 100 years up here. But they do need the help. It's a different world right now. The opportunity to have a community or a partnership with both the county and CAL FIRE is, in my opinion, and the volunteers just, well, I think it's a great opportunity and you ought to take it. $75,000, like the one of the gentlemen said, is absolutely zero in respect to the equipment and upkeeps and fire chief and everything. So I do appreciate volunteers more than you can imagine. So if I came across like I didn't, boy, believe me, that's anything but that. So I would strongly suggest that you get the partnership, work it through, and you as a council can hold the OES, Placer County, accountable if there are problems. So anyway, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hope you guys make the right decision.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment room? No? Any other electronic comments? Okay. On to council comments.
I have to close.
We're not ready.
Before with it, she can make a motion anytime.
Making a motion, that's what I wanted.
There's two things before you though. There's the cooperative agreement and there's the first reading of the ordinance. So if the council is gonna make a motion, they both need to be addressed.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're not quite done with the discussion. Or we haven't finished. That's great. So, Dave, anything?
Yeah, Tom, you stole my compliment. I think it's cool that there's all these ex-council people, mayors, I'm the newest kid on the block up here, but I really appreciate everyone's time. I learned some things tonight. For example, probably the biggest thing I learned tonight was I was unaware how much, I guess, we put our volunteers' safety in jeopardy. So whatever it's worth, sorry. And hopefully tonight could be the beginning of making a difference going forward. So this is a no-brainer for me. I think for those of you who have been part of previous meetings, I think I've kind of voiced my opinion in those previous meetings, but I think it's kind of sad that CAL FIRE even has to do a sales pitch, and sit through 2.5 hours, whatever it is of this. But I also, on the other hand, respect the other side. I respect opinions in general. But to me, when I think of safety and what's my job, what's my role as a council person, it's to protect the community, make decisions that make sense for the community. It's a no-brainer for me whatsoever. So I just want to say thank you guys, all of you who came out and just said something publicly. It means a lot.
Yep. So I'm going to just say a couple of things. So first, I really appreciate some of the firefighter guys back there that some of the comments you made. I wish you would have come up to council sooner to talk about some of the needs and all, because I hate to say it, this is the first time I've heard some of those detailed needs. Some of the high level stuff, yes, but not the detailed stuff. And I think it's really important whenever we have a business that's running for anybody at any level to say, here's a problem that we see happening. So it gets up where somebody can put attention on it. The other thing I'd like to say is I'm just amazed at how passionate everybody is about this. It doesn't matter which side of the issue you're on. It just tells me the people in this town and this county really care. And by the way, that's the best team you could ever have, right? So I just appreciate everybody in this. And I know it's always a struggle to make changes. So whenever we have to look at making a change, there's always going to be a struggle. So it's just, I ask everybody's patience as we work through some of these items to say, how do we get to closure on this? That's what I have to say.
You know, I would just say I appreciate everybody coming out to speak tonight and everyone's involvement who especially has been involved with this conversation as we've talked about it over the last several months. And, you know, as the person who kind of initially brought this forward and pushed for it, you know, I'm going to just be very straightforward that sometimes as an elected official, we are put in a position where we have to make decisions that not everyone's going to agree with. But at the end of the day, we were elected to make these decisions and to use our experience and our training, whatever it is we bring to the table, to make the business decisions we think are best for our town. And I firmly stand behind this decision. I think this is in the best interest of the city. I understand that there are going to be people who are very upset with my decision-making on this matter, but I'm willing to accept the fact that we're not going to agree, and I'm still willing to talk about it. So I think it's very clear how I'm going to vote tonight, and I really don't have a whole lot more to say on the issue than what I've already said so far.
Yeah, well, it obviously doesn't matter what I have to say about it at this point, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I'd just like to point out some of Matt's comments, talking about how there's been so many issues and maintenance stuff and all that. I just want to point out the fact that, yeah, I do have a little bit to do with that. I might have come home or come back at like 2:30 in the morning after busting my ass all day on call and not filled up an engine, something like that. It happens occasionally. But I also want to point out that CAL FIRE has been providing our oversight for the last 20 years. So they'll be the ones bringing that stuff to the council on the agendas and would have been pushing the city's agenda and getting the fire department information to the council. So I just want to point that out. And we have been a team with CAL FIRE for 20 years, and no matter what happened with this agreement, I would hope that we would continue that. And you know, just think about what everybody's super happy with this agreement. Think about what you could have had if you would have asked questions. We had almost no discussion on this. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon, looked at no other options, and just decided to go for it. I appreciate me and the city and CAL FIRE jumping on this and providing us with this agreement. I'm not saying it's a bad agreement. I just think it deserved a little bit more attention than 2 short workshops with discussion getting shut down and those and being called hostile. That's all I got. And did you want to make another comment?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to get this approved so that our city can be safe.
All righty. Second.
Let's make sure, Jameer, let's make sure what we need to, if you want to approve this agreement, you need a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the cooperative agreement, and a motion to introduce the proposed change to the ordinance by title only, waive the first reading, and schedule it for public hearing and possible adoption at the next meeting.
Marnie, if that's your motion, I'll provide a second.
That is my motion, thank you.
Okay. Do a roll call.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Aye.
Ackerman.
Aye.
Fatula.
Aye.
Burris. Aye. And Mayor Loman.
Nay. All right. Motion passes. And we'll thank you all for your comments and your concerns and addressing the council. So we'll move on to item 9B, mutual threat zone agreement with CAL FIRE. Wes, kick it off.
Mr. Mayor, I volunteered for this one too. This is
I emphasized at the last agreement that we were doing an agreement between the county and the city. This one is between the city and CAL FIRE. It's called a mutual threat zone agreement. It is being required by the county. In order for the county to execute the cooperative agreement, the city must approve this mutual threat zone agreement. What is it? So far, we've had a handshake agreement. It's been called a handshake agreement with CAL FIRE. And some of you may have to correct me with the technical terms here because I'm not a firefighter. It's my understanding that the city is responsible for incidents within its jurisdictional boundaries. That's called the local responsibility area. CAL FIRE is responsible for incidents outside the city's jurisdictional boundaries that are also not within somebody else's jurisdictional boundaries. That's called the state responsibility area. In order for CAL FIRE to respond to incidents within the city of Colfax, there needs to be, this agreement needs to be in place. And technically, I'm not sure why CAL FIRE is requiring it or why it's required, but maybe the chief could explain that. I do know that we are designating mutual threat zones, and that is what gives CAL FIRE the authority, the specific authority to come into the Colfax and perform its services.
Sure. Thanks, Mick. And yeah, I don't think I can be as eloquent or lawyerly as you in that speak, but I'll put it in layman's terms a little bit more. And thank you, Brian Estes, again. So the basis of a mutual threat zone is that I talked already about that state responsibility area and local responsibility area. So in a nutshell, when we're talking specifically about wildland fires right now, so this is very separate from the issue that was just at hand, but they are intermingled because of the name mutual threat zone. So in the state responsibility area, CAL FIRE as a state agency is responsible for the suppression of wildland fires on that state responsibility area. Any municipality in the state of California by law is designated as a local responsibility area, and therefore CAL FIRE as a state agency does not have any jurisdictional authority to suppress wildland fires fiscally or jurisdictionally within those city boundaries. So there's a number of ways that we can do that. One of the ways is what's called a wildland protection agreement, which is essentially like an insurance policy. It's a cost per acre that an entity pays based on a determination by the state of California, and then you receive the full breadth of CAL FIRE resources. The option that's in front of you now, which frankly is an extension of CAL FIRE as a state agency, as a partner and a cooperator to you as we continue with our relationship between the county and the city, is called a mutual threat zone. And what that means is that we determine that the scope of the city is a threat to the SRA, just as the scope inside the city is a threat from the SRA. So therefore, myself as the state fire chief, I think it's in good nature to respond the full breadth of CAL FIRE resources to a fire inside the city limits. Now, if a fire starts in the SRA, like in the canyon, and burns into the city limits, this doesn't apply. That's already the fiscal and jurisdictional responsibility of the state. However, if a fire originates inside the city limits of Colfax and damages homes, destroys property, burns acres, etc., and never leaves the city limits of Colfax, the state of California theoretically has no jurisdictional or fiscal authority for that incident, which means that the city of Colfax could be liable fiscally for not necessarily CAL FIRE, but requesting any mutual aid from any adjoining fire department, Placer Hills, Auburn, et cetera. They are going to potentially present you with a bill. The mutual threat zone basically allows me to expend, as the state fire chief, state resources and accept the fiscal responsibility for a fire in the city of Colfax. The third option that you can do is what's called CAL FIRE mutual aid, or the 7 points of light. But that's a very cumbersome agreement, because what it means is that the fire starts, the city determines that it's beyond their scope of control, it reaches a threshold on the bell curve, they call CAL FIRE analyzes that North region, and before we expend a single bit of state dollars, there's a time delay. This mutual threat zone gets a state response right off the bat on the initial dispatch. Right now, we do that, as Mick said, on kind of a handshake agreement. There is no mutual threat zone in place. My desire with the continuation of our cooperative agreement with the city is to extend that mutual threat zone to you in writing, in formality, with myself signing as the state chief, and that just makes it really clean for all parties concerned. So.
And as brief as this agreement is, it specifically says that the state accepts responsibility for suppression of fires within the city's jurisdictional boundaries.
That was way better. I said I was going to be in layman's terms.
So that's staff report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Public comment? No, nothing? Okay. Any comments?
I don't have anything to say, just.
David?
No comment.
Bill? Randy?
I'll just go ahead and make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
No, get a comment? Awesome. All right. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, aye. Passes. All right, 9C, Council. Primary Foster County Transportation Planning Agency alternate. Wes?
Mr. Mayor, just a second, you're going a lot faster than I am right now on this topic. So this item, it came up, there was a council member that had served on two boards. One is as the primary on the Pioneer Energy Board, as the alternate for the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. That representative is no longer available to serve on those boards. So staff is asking council to appoint another member of council or a member of the public or a staff member to those boards to fill in those positions.
Okay. Anybody got any suggestions of who to fill these positions? Anybody want to do it?
So, this is Pioneer, the one that Joe was on?
Yep, Pioneer and then TCPTA.
Okay,
alternate.
well, I can serve as alternate on transportation. I'd like to suggest that we have Wes, our city manager, serve on Pioneer, unless David wants to. I know that you have a full boat, so.
Wes would be much better than me for that board.
So that's my suggestion.
You okay with that, Wes?
Yes, if that's the need of council, I will gladly serve on the board.
Cool. All right, make a motion to approve Wes as the Pioneer Energy primary and Marnie as the alternate for the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Mayor Lohman, can I just have Councilmember Mendoza abstain due to be an alternate? Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes, one abstained. Thank you. And on to the good of order. Marnie, anything?
No, Mayor, I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I know we all didn't get what we wanted with, the previous thing we voted on, but I really hope that going forward, we can look at this in positive light.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
I'm gonna hold mine the next time.
Okay, Randy?
I got nothing.
Cool. I was gonna say you don't know what you got till it's gone, and now it's gone. So enjoy knowing what you got. Anybody got anything else?
Super professional.
All right, then meeting adjourned.